Hey guys, Chad Lyman here. I'm at my house here in Las Vegas. Just going to do a short, several video series on coaching and instructing and ways you can do that either in a law enforcement background, in a or a BJJ or MMA background, self-defense, or even for your own edification or improvement as an athlete yourself or as an officer. So this little overview is going to be based on how do I develop as an instructor and my ability to retain the stuff I'm training and in my ability to pass on information or help coach others. So that'll be the focus. You see on the board here, there's going to be an overview of coaching, okay? And I get these concepts and I get this overview from multiple great sources throughout my career in training and then applying in the field as a police officer, and then also coaching at a high level in both Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and MMA and in law enforcement, military, self-defense settings. So I've had a ton of great guys go before me that I've tried to pay attention when they taught me and then try to emulate them in teaching other people, and I've had a lot of success with it. And this is just going to be a short overview on things that I've learned that maybe you could use as well, either in your own preparation or in teaching others. So overview of coaching. First off is make sure you're outcome-based in the material you're training or you're teaching, and in the material you're preparing for practice sessions. So an example of this is make sure you understand what it is that you're trying to achieve with the force you're going to use. For example, if I'm a gi jiu-jitsu student and I'm getting ready for Pan Ams, I'm going to train differently because the outcomes of how to win Pan Ams are going to train differently than a guy getting ready for EBI, which is a no-gi tournament, much different rule set, Eddie Bravo Invitational, something along those lines, right? I'm going to have two different outsets. Now, I'm going to have a totally different outcome or ways I could win or be successful. If it's an MMA match, we can actually strike, those kind of things. Rule sets within MMA can change my preparation prior to the event. And then finally, the differences between self-defense and ultimately law enforcement applications of force. All those things are different. Let's look at law enforcement applications of force because that's where I've gained a ton of experience over the years. So I need to understand the overall outcome of law enforcement uses of force are going to be either self-defense for myself, which is to get me out of bad situations or keep me safe, and then application of force upon the bad guy, which would involve trying to gain some kind of control over that bad guy and then custody ultimately with handcuffs. Now understand the bad guy is a general term. It just means the other side. I actually don't believe that they're necessarily worse than anybody else. Somebody could be mentally ill or high or desperate or those things, or they could be just really a bad person. That's a general term I use. So outcome-based. The outcome in law enforcement applications of force against somebody else are either to defend myself or somebody else, and at the same time to gain control and then custody of my bad guy or my suspect. So I've got to stay true to that. I'm not training a police officer for a gi jiu-jitsu tournament where I should be encouraging him to play guard or bottom position if he ends up underneath somebody. If I'm encouraging guard or a large part of my curriculum happens from their back, like they're throwing up arm bars or kimuras or whatever jiu-jitsu stuff you want to do. If you're a high-level jiu-jitsu guy and you have all those tools, or gal, you got all those tools on your tool belt, you're better prepared than your friends. But that's not the focus of a general, or shouldn't be, a general LEO curriculum or training session where I'm going to be trying to pull an arm bar off my back. For one thing, if I stay bottom position and I don't escape or get out of that position, that's actually not helping me defend myself or others. I'm still in a very poor position. Also, even an armbar from bottom that's successful doesn't give me a ton of control and doesn't lead to cuffing, even though I've seen many people have some very interesting ways to get to cuffing from arm bars and stuff. And if we were really fighting, I think it would be challenging to use those effectively, because it can be challenging just to armbar somebody in a jiu-jitsu rule set. Then it becomes increasingly challenging if you're bottom and he can punch or kick you. Then it becomes super challenging if he could shoot or stab you or take your weapons, or his friend could come over and kick you. So I'm looking for my training to be true to the outcomes I'm trying to achieve in the training session I'm having. So make sure that you're sticking to that. Now, there's zero wrong with you acquiring a deep level of skills, and we're going to talk about that in the next segment of how we can use different methodology to become very skilled and well-rounded. And I'm a huge fan of that. I believe every cop should be competent in striking, very good wrestler, jiu-jitsu black belt, good weapon retention, good takeaways, good edge weapon defense, good decision making, all those things, right? But that's going to be a lifetime of training and regular training, consistent over time. But how I do that, my outcome-based approach can really assist me in getting there. Now, I want to train fundamentals. And fundamentals and basics are not the same thing. People will say basics win fights. I disagree. I think fundamentals are win fights. What's the difference? A basic is, what is a guard? What is butterfly guard? What is half guard? Someone who doesn't even know that can't begin to fight effectively from those positions. If I have fundamental functional grasp of butterfly guard, that means that I not only know the basic position, but I can fundamentally fight from there effectively, even if the person's trying to punch me or take a weapon system off me or something. When I acquire fundamental ability, I've eclipsed basic. I've gone beyond it. And so I'm looking for fundamentals, which means I'm actually going to be fight functional in an actual confrontation against a resisting, uncooperative opponent. I've got to reach that fundamental level to even be effective in a fight. So that's why I say fundamentals, not basics, okay? Fundamentals also, like if you take an approach of basics, your students will be incessantly asking you for advanced stuff. Advanced just means the fundamentals done well, on time, on a consistent basis, to where even the other guy knows you're going to attack them fundamentally and they can't stop you. That's how you can tell if you've eclipsed and gone beyond the basics. I'm fundamentally sound, okay? Greatness lies in doing common things uncommonly well, not in doing some freaky thing. Common things uncommonly well. That's when you're great. That's when you're fight functional and you're fundamentally sound. And I'm going to get there by focusing on principles and concepts. A principle is something that's generally always true, pretty much always true. I use the word generally there, and that might seem funny, but I don't want to say it's always true. There's no absolutes. But if I use a principle, for example, the person who scores angles has an advantage. The person who controls inside position has an advantage. The person who controls distance has an advantage. The person who can maintain their ability to move and control the other person's ability to move has an advantage in a principle-based manner. Concepts are things that I believe I can get to through applying principles, okay? But having a principle and concept-based approach versus a technique-driven approach is a far greater way to train and acquire fight-functioning fundamentals, okay? It's far better. And so finally we have techniques. Techniques are important, but if your system is just a list of techniques, it's flawed. It's broken. We want to have those fight functional fundamental principles first, then our techniques. And then finally, we need to know how and why techniques work. When do they not work? When do they work? What is the counter when they don't work? What's the counter the bad guy might do to us if we apply them? We need to understand the how and whys of each technique that we might want to apply throughout the encounter. So as an instructor, if you'll, as an overview of coaching, be outcome-based, know your outcomes, understand how to get there, be fundamental-based, okay? So you can be fight functional, focus on those principles and concepts that are going to deliver your fundamentals. And techniques are important, but not as important as that stuff. And you've got to know how and why stuff works or doesn't work, especially at a high level as a coach, to transfer that knowledge to somebody else so they can use it in that next event they have. So this is a great way to take coaching and then apply it for your students. Go train a lot, guys.